A common experience that people who are struggling with scrupulosity share with me is their experience of being misunderstood. This feeling and experience of not being truly understood results in deepening their sense of isolation and disconnection from the lived experience of others, even with the people whom they love the most. It is often very discouraging, and it is not at all unusual that this can become one of the primary reasons that a person who is suffering with the disorder chooses not to seek help and direction. What's the use? No one understands what's going on with me, so what's the point? This misunderstanding is not only from people with whom they are in relationship, such as a spouse or a friend or someone in whom they confide, but it extends even to the people they might turn to for help. The list of priest confessors, spiritual directors, social workers, doctors, and counselors who simply do not get it is seemingly endless. Not all of these people are misinformed, at least in part, but most of them are still unable to reflect back accurately to the person who is suffering an understanding of their condition, which indicates that they really understand. This feeling of being misunderstood, and not only being misunderstood, but also a sense that the experience of being misunderstood is a permanent reality, makes the scrupulous disorder all the more painful and isolating. No wonder there is a significant lack of appreciation and understanding of scrupulosity. Those who suffer with the disorder live their lives in the shadows of human experience and seldom in the light. There are no organized fundraising appeals in motion, no celebrity spokesperson for the disorder. It's truly private, quiet, and deadly. Despite the feeling and experience of the person who suffers with the disorder that they are stuck with it and stuck with their condition, forever frustrated with any possibility of receiving meaningful help and direction, there are nonetheless occasional attempts at reaching out for help. I understand that this reaching out is an act of real bravery, often fueled by the fact that the pain of not reaching out for some kind of help gets to the point where it is more painful than the fear of being misunderstood. If all of this is not enough, there is even more to contend with. Even when a person determines to share their suffering with another person, there is no guarantee that the sharing will produce a positive or even somewhat helpful result. Part of this frustration and this continued misunderstanding is because each person's detailed description of their scrupulosity is very different. Even people with some experience of the disorder are amazed at the complexity of the disorder and how the experience is truly unique to each person who suffers. Another reason, and this is very unfortunate, is that many times people who are in service provider positions have a tendency to quickly identify the issues or the problems, recognizing in a general way the diagnosed disorder, but again missing the forest because of the trees. It's never enough for a person who suffers to be understood as a scrupulous penitent, or the client with OCD, or the patient with whatever it might be. Primarily, the person who is suffering is not a penitent, not a client, and not a patient. They are a human being who is suffering. All this is well and good, perhaps even helpful in coming to at least a beginning understanding of the dynamic that is at work. However, as helpful as it might be, even this beginning context of partial understanding does not go deep enough. Something more is required, and it's difficult to grasp. It is not at all unusual that the cry of being misunderstood is not only descriptive of people who are in some kind of relationship with the person who suffers with the disorder. It's also descriptive of the person who is suffering. The most misunderstood and unappreciated person in the scrupulous dynamic is not always the potential caregiver, helper, mentor, or whatever, but it's often the person who is suffering. They do not comprehend and understand what they are experiencing. And this condition adds even more potential complexity to the path of the management of the disorder. My experience leads me again and again to a place where if I listen hard enough to the description of the suffering and resist the urge to jump to any conclusions, I will be able to discern something at the very beginning of our shared conversation which is extremely important. I will hear the person tell me if they in fact understand what they are suffering, or whether they're still struggling to figure out what's going on. There's a big difference between each experience. It's also a defining insight into their personal experience of being either misunderstood or supported in their struggle with the disorder. The person who is aware of what they are experiencing, even if they lack the ability to precisely identify the components and the manifestations of what is going on, clearly understand, at least on some level, the parameters of their suffering. For people with religious scrupulosity, they fundamentally understand that what they are experiencing is not a spiritual issue. They possess an inner wisdom, hard won through years of quiet struggle, that they are not sinning or destroying their relationship with God. In their heart of hearts, they understand that they are experiencing a painful disorder, that they are somehow disconnected from a larger experience and reality of the sacred. But they also know that it's not their free will or choice that is driving their scrupulous perspective. People who have arrived at a point of inner wisdom recognize that the obsessions and the compulsions that they engage in are not really helpful. They provide some kind of relief for a short period of time, but never offer the relief that is lasting. Some have been able to identify behaviors, including religious practice and disciplines, that trigger their anxiety and fuel their obsessions and compulsions. They put much of their energy into avoiding the triggers and trying to engage with only what is positive and healthy. They are truly on the well-earned path of management of their disorder. For those who are on the path of management, the contrast with those who are not on any type of discernible path of healing and managing of the disorder is measurable. It is very painful to experience a person who is suffering, not only from the disorder, but are also suffering from a basic misunderstanding of what they are suffering. People who are still struggling with the disorder, either somewhere at the beginning of the struggle or somewhere down the path of the continuing experience of the struggle, often make an erroneous but understandable assumption that they are in a spiritual struggle. They sincerely believe that they're trying to combat sin. They believe that they are in constant danger of compromising or even destroying their relationship with God. They see sin everywhere, or if not sin, then at least imperfection that they understand is the gateway to sin. More often than not, serious sin. It's not at all surprising that when these people seek help, they manifest to the person who is trying to help them a torrent of fear, anxiety, confusion that frightens them, and not at all surprising, may even frighten their provider, the person's trying to help them. For this person, the unfamiliarity of the scrupulous experience can appear with the rawness of a wound that is constantly exposed and always tender and painful. The experience is often the singular point of contact in which the assumption is made by the person who is suffering that no one understands. Effectively, what happens at the point of contact is the intensity, the confusion, and the torrent of feelings and emotions that are released drown out any possibility that a healing connection might occur. The whole conversation ends with even more frustration. A frustration that in many instances drives the person who is suffering even more into isolation and suffering. I tried to get help, but nothing helpful was offered. My pastoral experience with this kind of encounter has helped me to understand that all is not lost, but every word that is spoken in exchange and communication is potentially harmful or healing. The word becomes harmful and not at all helpful when the result drives the person deeper into isolation. On the other hand, the word is healing when it offers non-judgmental acceptance and understanding. It is okay. In fact, it is more than okay that the intensity of the feelings has been shared. They do not need to be explained, fixed, or soothed, or anything else. They simply need to be experienced and accepted. Is it okay with you that we try and work on this together? I do not want you to be alone. I'm willing to walk with you and be with you, and I will try very hard to understand what you are experiencing. Often, but not always, these words or words to this effect are enough. They are enough because the words that are shared and the experiences that are felt by each person established an essential relationship of shared vulnerability. In this relationship, there is no one who has the upper hand, no one who is the expert. There are only two people who are sharing with each other an experience of being human. For a person of faith, the experience of shared humanity is also an experience of manifested grace and blessing.